Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for an introduction to SMU DataArts analytic tools. My name is Monica Lewis. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the engagement manager at SMU DataArts. I'm presenting from the traditional lands of the Sana peoples. And I also want to take this moment to introduce my colleague who it will be assisting today's webinar, Rochelle Brisson, who is our event and engagement coordinator. Rochelle will be helping answering questions throughout our presentation, and she'll be in the background to assist with any technical difficulties that we may encounter and provide support to all of the content that I'll cover today. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Now, for a bit of housekeeping, I want to ensure that we have the best sound quality for today's presentation. So we're going to have everyone remain on mute today, but there will be ways that you can engage with us during our presentation time, and I just want to highlight a few. First, we have the Q&A option. You are welcome to utilize the Q&A feature for any questions that you have about today's content. Feel free to use the question option to just drop your questions as they come. You don't have to wait for a particular moment. Feel free to share your questions at any time. We also have that chat feature available to you. You're able to respond in real time using that chat feature. As you can see, Rochelle has already said hello to everyone in the chat feature. Again, it's another place for you to ask questions. You'll also see us share some helpful links that we'll reference today in our presentation. And again, if you have any questions, the chat feature is a great place for you. Closed captioning is available during today's presentation. Again, you'll just find that CC icon located on your Zoom dashboard, and you'll be able to activate closed captioning. There's a small drop-down menu on that closed captioning tab, and if you would like to make adjustments like size or how you view your closed captioning, you can do that by clicking that drop-down menu and clicking the the closed captioning settings. And just one last thing, we are recording today's presentation for folks who aren't able to join us, or if you would like to go back to the recording to, freshen up on something that you may have missed, you'll have that available to you. We'll send a follow-up email that will include our PDF version of today's slides and this recording. Now, many of you have entered your data, or you may be in the process of entering your data into the cultural data profile, and that could be as a part of a grant application process. I want to talk today about why SMU DataArts does the work that we do and how you can put your data to work using some of our resources beyond that grant application process. Now, on your screen, you'll see a little bit about what we do. We develop data collection research methods to respond to evolving sector needs. We collect high quality longitudinal data on the arts and cultural sector. We focus our research on the health and vitality of the sector, and we engage the field with insights from the data that people can use. And today we'll explore ways that you can access those insights from your data today. Now, many of you are here because you have successfully completed your cultural data profile. I want to say congratulations to you and thank you. I want to start by talking a little bit about why we collect certain particular points in the way that we do. Now, first, our data can help you make connections across operational areas. We collect data about your finances, your staffing, and your programs, even your space. In the CDP, we have all of these different types of data collected in one place. Now, this allows you to assess performance holistically and make connections across the different areas of your work. Next, you can make comparisons within the sector. Now, this is because we collect data in one standard format, and that allows for comparison from organization to organization. And finally, you can understand trends over time. Because we collect longitudinal data, that means it'll be in the same format year to year. So as you enter your data annually going forward, your DataArts account will grow in value and as a resource for any long-term planning that you may be doing as an organization. Now, that's a bit of background on why we collect the data points that you've seen in the cultural data profile. The rest of our time together, we're going to explore some of the ways that that data is being put to use. And that could be for you as an organization and for the sector. We'll explore the different tools that you have available to you that can help you access those insights. This could be about the field and this could be about your organization. So we'll take a peek at a couple of sector-wide research. We'll explore each of our analytic reports. We'll touch on the KIPI dashboard. And before we leave, before that hour ends, we'll look at some additional resources and some upcoming research that we have coming from SMU DataArts that we hope you'll be excited about. With that, let's start with our research and those insights. The research team at SMU DataArts, they regularly look at the data that we collect from organizations alongside data from other sources to provide research and insights about the arts and cultural sector. First, I want to explore how that data enables the research. And it starts with the data that you're entering into the cultural data profile. So each year, you or someone at your organization takes on that exciting responsibility of entering the financial, programmatic, and workforce data into the cultural data profile. And I'll share that around the country, many of your peers are doing the exact same thing, entering their data. Now, as more and more organizations enter their data into our data set, it truly becomes richer. We have data from nearly 20,000 arts organizations within our data set, spanning many disciplines, organizational sizes, and representing many different states. Our research team also connects your organizational data to data from other sources, and that creates a model for the entire sector. Our team uses all of that data to understand trends within the sector and perform other types of analysis to better understand why the trends are occurring. And I want to show you a closer look at that. Now, as we know, arts and cultural organizations, well, you don't operate within a vacuum. You operate within your communities. And it's important to tie organizational level data with the data about communities. And this is where our integrated data set comes into play. We attempt to model the entire arts and cultural ecosystem using a variety of data sources. This data ecosystem contains the in-depth financial and programmatic information collected through the cultural data profile. Now, it also contains data on all arts and cultural nonprofits who file a 990 or a 990 postcard for the IRS. We also integrate our data with data from national service organizations like the Theater Communications Group or Opera America. Now, this helps us obtain basic information on all arts and cultural activity, providing context on areas where we may not have within the cultural data profile. We bring in Census Bureau data to see who lives and operates other businesses nearby and to understand the density versus the dispersion of people, as well as demographic and socioeconomic characteristics of people in those communities. We also have arts purchase data from our partners at TRG Arts, as well as the inflow of public funding data from the National Endowment from the Arts. This data is received annually from the NEA, as well as data from the IMLS, which focuses on funding for museums. Finally, state level funding data comes from the National Assembly of Arts Agencies, state art agencies, and it's integrated into a data set that we geocode for all of these data points, meaning we pinpoint the exact location of every piece of data so that we can link it all together. And that allows the different data sources to communicate to one another. And this allows our research team to understand the full context of which the arts and cultural organizations are working. So we use this integrated data set to answer many questions about the sector. Today, I want to talk about a couple of examples, starting with Arts Vibrancy that utilizes this data that we've talked about. Arts Vibrancy, or AVI, is our annually published report or index that draws on 13 unique measures, which covers aspects from supply, demand, public support for the arts and culture, and are adjusted for cost of living and population size. We published our 2024 Arts Vibrancy Index this past fall. This report includes an interactive arts vibrancy map that reveals the arts vibrancy scores of every county within the US. We also released the state vibrancy index uh, and the actual AVI that lists the top 40 most arts vibrant communities. And I'll share that this list is divided into top 20 most vibrant large communities and top 10 most vibrant mid-sized and small communities. And I want to show you some of the takeaways from this latest iteration. As in our previous years, the data shows that highly vibrant art communities are dispersed broadly throughout the United States. From urban centers to rural communities, every region of the country has vibrant art communities, and that really shows up in this report. Um, I'll point out that we had 4 new communities listed in this past year's ABI. So I want to call them out. So Syracuse, New York joined the list for top medium communities. We have Auburn, Branson, and Taos, New Mexico. They joined for the first time in our top small communities. So congratulations to those communities. And for 2024, San Francisco and its surrounding areas, it remained at the top of the list. And I believe, yep, Rochelle has already shared a link to our ABI, so you can take a look and learn more about these communities. Now, this year, we also released the state rankings for art vibrancy. States have dramatically different contexts and cultures, and we were curious about how arts vibrancy may correlate with other contextual variables at the state level. We've explored a broad range of possibilities and found some interesting relationships that states with higher proportions of rural populations tend to have lower levels of arts vibrancy, with some notable exceptions. State rankings were higher on arts vibrancy. They generally had a lower poverty rate, but having lower levels of poverty didn't guarantee top arts vibrancy rankings. And I'll say that the top 5 states remained unchanged from 2023. So New York remained at the #1 spot for the second year in the row. And again, my colleague Rochelle is dropping the state AVI for you to refer to if you would like to. Now, this next bit of data, we use data collection specifically from the cultural data profile to identify financial and operational trends that impacted the sector. Um, in the spring of last year, we examined data for arts and cultural organizations around the country who completed the cultural data profile, and we focused on fiscal year 2023. This analyst draws data provided from 734 organizations who completed the CDP. Now, this 734 organizations, they represented different and varying budget sizes, geographic locations, and artistic disciplines. Of these, 11% or excuse me, 11% or 81 organizations identified as serving or having a mission rooted in a traditional, upheld Black, Indigenous, or other communities of color. And we published the early analysts in April of 2024. And then we returned back to that data to continue to look at trends in July. Now, looking at the data, we found some interesting trends on the lingering effects of the pandemic and its impact to funding, staffing, and working capital. Now, with funding, we found that there was a greater reliance on contributed revenue, and that continued through fiscal year 2023, with it accounting for 53% of total operating revenue. Earned revenue is recovering, but hasn't quite caught up to inflation or fully rebound in terms of percentage of organizational expenses that it covered. Personnel expenses were consistently the largest portion of the organization's expenses, and it played an even larger role post-pandemic, making up to 56% of total expenses for fiscal year 2023. And the average staff size had grown from 2022 to 2023 through some additions of permanent part-time positions. And looking at trend data from fiscal year 2019 to 2023, We found that on average, organizations did a remarkable job operating within their means during this crisis, producing surpluses for 2021 and 2022. With these surpluses of working capital or organizational liquidity, it rose throughout the pandemic, with the median months of working capital increasing at 9.8 months of working capital in 2021. Now, in 2023, trends showed a reveal that this trend of arts leaders realizing that audiences weren't coming back at the same levels while costs were rising, it made it difficult to do more with less. We've published a series of blogs that go into the detail of data, and we had a really great conversation about what these trends look like last year, and I encourage you to take a look at that data. It's always informative to be able to see CDP data in action, and I encourage you to continue to look there. Now, again, these are examples of how your data is providing a helpful picture about the sector. It's illuminating many important broader trends. But many of you who've joined today may be curious about how your specific organization is evolving and how your CDP data can help you understand it. That's where your SMU DataArts analytic reports that can come in to provide some of those insights for you. The analytic reports can contain many of the same metrics and the data points that we've used in our sector-wide release, but they're calculated for your specific organization. They contain the data that your organization entered into the cultural data profile, and these reports, they're formatted in an easy-to-read way. Now, each analytic report highlights one aspect of your organization, one type of financial statement, or a group of data organized around a central theme. Our analytic reports, they fall into three categories: annual, trend, and comparison. Each version of the analytic report allows for unique insights and perspectives into your organization's performance. So I want to start by looking at the annual report. The annual report provides a summary of your organization's financial activity, program activity, staffing data, and attendance through a series of tables and graphs. This report can be valuable and can be also a communication tool to help executive directors, board members, or even potential donors and other staff members understand high-level financial and programmatic information about your organization. This report also can be useful as you and your staff work to plan for a future based on your organization's past performance. Situations where you may find yourself utilizing this annual report could include strategic planning. You could use it as a starting point for thinking systematically about your organization's past and future. Board meetings, for example, you may include the annual report in your board book for a summary of 2 years' finances. It could also be a really great way to orient new staff or new leadership. This report could also be a great way for you to share with prospective donors in donor meetings. Now, these are just a few examples that we found that folks have utilized this report. I want to show you now how to find that report within our system. So this is your SMU DataArts dashboard. This should be familiar to you. It's where when you log into our platform, this is always where you start. You do everything at this starting point. So right now, I'll show that in this dashboard, we're looking at 3 years of completed CDP data, which you can see in the section called Your Surveys. Now, once you've submitted your data for a single fiscal year, you are immediately able to access our analytic reports. Now, to run an analytic report, you would find that Analytics tab at the top of the navigation menu. And when you click it, you'll find the 3 report types that I just mentioned: the annual, trend, and comparison reports. Now, for this example, we're looking at the annual report, so we would select the annual option. And then we would select the years that we would like to see included in the report. And you can select up to 3 years of completed data when running this particular report. Now, once the report generates, you'll find a preview on your screen and a window that will let you either open or save the report in PDF format. Now, a notifications area is in the upper right-hand corner, and that will let you know when your report is ready if you find yourself navigating to something else as the report is generating. Now, this is an example of the annual report. And remember, this report provides an overview of your organization's finances and programs. The report starts with a high-level look at key financial metrics, including total revenue and expenses, changes in net assets, total net assets, and revenue and expenses less in kind. Changes in net assets is equivalent to your surplus or deficit for each year. And total net assets provides a snapshot of your balance sheet of everything your organization had at the end of each fiscal year. Now, this is similar to an individual's net worth. The next series that you'll find is a series of pie charts that illustrates the high-level allocation of revenue and expenses across categories, which can be an easier way to visualize the changes. You'll also find your workforce data, and that will be followed by your attendance data. Now, the last 3 pages of this report will show your program activity, starting with your in-person programs, your digital programming, and all other programs. Now that you've seen an overview of the annual report, I want to show you an example of how an example organization would use this data. So we're going to look at the example community dance company, and we'll see their plans of how they want to use the report. They're planning for strategic planning. They have 2 new staff members on their leadership team, and they want to connect them to how the organization has performed in the past, and that was going to help them in future communication. They also plan to kick off the strategic planning process with their staff, and they'll do this by looking back at their historic performance and including looking at their financials, their staffing, and their programmatic data. And all of these examples, this annual report would be a great tool for all of these cases. It's a great conversation starter for the big picture view of your organization's historic performance. I'm going to continue on with the next type of report that's available to you, and that's the trend report. Trend reports analyze changes in your organization from year to year. This means that it can help you understand how decisions at your organization and changes in your surrounding environment may have affected your finances and maybe your operations. What's unique to these reports is that you can select between 6 different areas of focus, giving you a variety of trend reports to run. So I want to show you what those options are. So you have a financial overview trend report that examines revenue, spending, and balance sheet data. Program activity trend reports looks at your data about your programs, attendance, and pricing. And the marketing trend report explores your marketing spending and the return on investment for those marketing efforts. You'll have the fundraising trend reports that looks at your fundraising spending, return on investment, and giving trends for your organization. You'll also have the working capital trend report that analyzes the strength of your balance sheet and financial sections. So if you wanted to compare that national trends data with your own working capital, that'd be a great utilization. And finally, you'll see the workforce trend report, which studies your staff, contractors, volunteers, and personnel expenses. Now, before we take a look at how to find the trend report within the system, I want to spend time with another example organization, the Example Ballet Company. Now, this organization is at the midpoint of implementing their strategic plan, and they want to see their progress towards their financial goals over the past few years. Specifically, this Example Ballet Company is wanting to get more trend data that helps them see their year-to-year trends in the revenue. Now, the trend data will help them evaluate their annual spending. And if possible, they'd like to explore their balance sheet too. For this specific goal in mind, I would recommend that this organization, the example ballet company, they should run a financial overview trend report. And I'm going to show you how to find that report within our system. Now we're returning back to that analytics report page, and this time we would select the trend option. Now, once you select trend, you'll see a drop-down menu where you will select which type of trend report you would like to run. And again, for this example, we're going to select the financial overview trend report for that example ballet company. Again, they were hoping to learn the most ideal way for them to see their financial information. Now, once we select that option, once that report runs, it's going to look like this. And I want to take a moment to explore the different sections of the report for the example ballet company. Now, the first section that they would see in their financials is their financial summary, where they would find data on their unrestricted activity. Now, unrestricted activity only includes revenue that was available for use during the fiscal year. Any revenue that was earmarked for future use or intended to be saved is not included in this table. There are charts that look at unrestricted operating revenue by source and operating expenses by functional grouping. On the second page, for this organization, they will find their balance sheet data and a graph that highlights the components of net assets. On the final page, you'll find the expense information as well as some metrics. Now, this includes some helpful definitions and the formulas. At the bottom of the page is a graph that illustrates their unrestricted coverage of expenses. And this graph can help example ballet company visualize the flow of their revenue and expenses year after year. So when the example ballet company looks at this report, it will help them talk about and understand how their revenue and spending has changed over time. And it will allow them to answer questions like, have the sources of revenue that they've depended on shifted? And how has their spending kept pace with their revenue? They can also look at how all of this has impacted their bottom line and net assets. Now, I want to continue on to the final type of analytic report that's available, and that's the comparison report. And I'll share, this is one of my favorite reports. The comparison report allows you to compare your organization with the comparison group that you create by selecting certain criteria. Now, this is a useful tool for benchmarking your data with that of other organizations using the data that they've entered into the cultural data profile. When running a comparison report, you can choose to run the report on default data, or you can make customizations where you have more control over the type of organizations included in your comparison pool. Now, let's take a moment to explore the concept of benchmarking and how it can be useful. Comparison reports can be used for benchmarking because they show how your organization is performing compared to the average for peer organizations. This can provide context for your organization stakeholders, including your board members. It can deepen conversations about performance in key areas. And benchmarking, used wisely, can also be a great planning tool. For example, if you're considering a future for your organization's growth where you're increasing your activities or hiring additional staff or both, you can use this type of analytic report to see the average earned in contributed revenue for organizations larger than yours, which may help you craft a plan and set targets to achieving your goal in sight. Or if you're seeking to become more sustainable by planning for increased savings as an organization, comparisons to your peers may help you understand how other organizations are achieving these goals. And again, this can help you begin with crafting your plan. Now, like the trend report, there are different subsections or different variations of this report that you're able to run. And they are the financial activity, which compares common financial metrics across organizations, fundraising, marketing, working capital, and workforce comparison reports. Now, to run a comparison report, again, starting back to that analytics page, you would select the comparison option. And for this one, if we see that drop-down menu where we can see those different options, we're going to choose the fundraising comparison report. So once we click down, we would click that option, and then we would select the year to run it on. And I want to point out, comparison reports can only be run on a single fiscal year. And again, that has to be a year that you have data within our system. So for this example, we'll look at the fiscal year 2022. Now, once you've chosen the report and the year, the report will by default run on default criteria. Our system will use background data that you've entered into the cultural data profile as the basis to form the default comparison pool. Now, for this report, if we use the default criteria, there would be 356 organizations included in our comparison report. To have more control over the organizations that are included in your comparison group, I want to show you how you can make some certain customizations to have a bit more control. So on your screen, you'll find a highlighted section that's squared by a red box. You'll see 3 sections within that space for customizations where you can refine certain data points. If you click on total expenses, which is the first option that you'll find, you can see that the organization's total expenses for fiscal year 2022 was roughly $241,000. Again, the default is going to automatically include all organizations with a similar budget size to your organization in the comparison group. You are free and welcome to change the budget category either by selecting from those predefined ranges that you see on your screen, or you can manually change the minimum and maximum expenses of organizations to be included in your comparison pool. The next criteria that you would find is related to discipline and characteristics. Your options in this section include NTEE classifications, NISP disciplines, NISP institution types, or a taxonomy that the SMU DataArts research team created to divide our data set into 7 broad categories. For this example, for a bit of customization control, we're going to select the option community, and that's from the SMU DataArts taxonomy. Now, the final criteria on this page is it allows you to filter by geography. You can choose whether to select by geographic boundaries or electoral districts. And in this example, we're going to select by state and search for Ohio. Now that we've narrowed down by budget size, characteristics, and location, we can see that at the bottom of the screen that our report will include 7 organizations in our comparison pool. Now, here are a few things to think about as you're creating your own customization pools. In order to maintain privacy of organizational data, you must have at least 3 organizations included in the comparison pool to run a report. If you set the selection criteria to narrow, check which year you've selected for the report. Most organizations can't or don't enter their data immediately at the end of their fiscal year. So even though many organizations have closed their 2024 fiscal year, those organizations may have not received their audit or may not have entered their data yet. So if you're hoping to find a complete comparison group, I would encourage you to maybe change the year to maybe 2023, where the overall number of organizations who've entered their data will be much larger. Now, if you've narrowed down by location and still don't have enough organizations within your pool, you can choose to add geographic regions, which will give you a slightly wider group than one city or one county. And finally, there are multiple options for identifying discipline or institution type. If the one you originally chose is a bit too narrow, I encourage you to try adding additional options that are similar to how your organization describes itself, or use a broader category within our data arts taxonomy. Now, let's look at another example organization and let's learn from them on how they would use the fundraising comparison report. And we'll look at the example Art Center. They are preparing a new fundraising plan and they want to understand their past fundraising performance a little bit better. They're specifically interested in how their spending on fundraising compares to their peers and how their fundraising efficiency compares to their peers. So I want to take a look at the fundraising comparison report. And the first thing I want to point out is the layout of this particular comparison report. On each row of data, the first column shows the information for your organization. And there are two columns that display the data for the comparison group. First, with the average, and then with the median. The first section of the fundraising report shows some high-level totals related to fundraising, including total contributed revenue, total fundraising expenses, and total expenses. The next section includes metrics that are calculated from your data. And since this is a comparison report, it includes that information for the comparison group as well. The report includes metrics like the percentage of total expenses that went towards fundraising and the amount of contributions brought in with each dollar spent, which will address the question from the example Art Center, who was looking at that efficiency question. Continuing on in this report, below the metrics section, there is a graph that shows fundraising expenses as a percentage of total expenses and as a percentage of total contributions. And the chart on the next page shows the total contributions by contributor type. That could be board, individual, or foundational. And the number of contributors and the average contribution size for each category. Now, that's going to conclude our walkthrough of SMU DataArts analytic reports. I now want to show you one more tool that is really helpful for benchmarking that's also found through our platform, and that's the KIPI Dashboard. KIPIs stand for Key Intangible Performance Indicators. The dashboard provides benchmarking scores ranging from 1 to 100 on 24 key performance indicators for your organization. The KIPI dashboard also provides a leveled playing field. You may be curious, what do I mean by a leveled playing field? Before your scores are assigned to your organization, our research team controls for factors that affect your indicators. The KIPI dashboard helps organizations understand their financial and operating performance relative to similar organizations in key areas and takes into account your place-specific factors such as population, demographics, or density of art organizations within your community. Even local factors like commute times in your area may impact your attendance. The dashboard also takes into account characteristics of your local funding environment, like the level of state and federal government funding in your community. It also looks at organizational factors like your organization's age, specific sector, target audience, budget size, the number of offerings you have, and your ticket pricing. These are all things that are givens about your organization or community that we know also impact performance. Our researchers have analyzed how each of these factors affect key performance metrics and have controlled for these effects before providing your score on each measure. The idea behind the KIPIs and your particular KIPI score is that once you control for all of the factors that I've just mentioned, whether your organization is doing well or doing poorly in a key area, it may be the result of things that are harder to measure, like program content, good decision making, your brand strength, the relationships that you've built in your community, even artistic and managerial skills. The dashboard is isolating these intangible factors. Now, I want to show you what that dashboard looks like. And as a reminder, there are 24 indicators in total, and they're divided into 9 broad categories. Now, we intentionally offer a large number of metrics. We know that each organization will choose the metrics that are important to them. So, as you are exploring your KIPIs and your KIPI score, I encourage you to only choose maybe the top 5 that matter most to you and ignore the rest. It's also worth noting that this dashboard is only available to you and your organization. We do not share it with your grant makers because we truly want this tool to be a safe space for you to look and think about your organization. You can choose to share your KIPI scores with anyone, but we as SMU Data Arts will not share them on your behalf. On each indicator, you'll find a score ranging from 1 to 100. These scores, they represent percentiles. So think like an SAT score. So if you receive a score of 50, that means that 50% of organizations scored higher than you, and 50% of organizations scored lower than you. Now, I think this is a really good thing to remember since many of us are used to thinking or seeing a score of 50 to indicate failing or not hitting the mark. But when you think about it in the range of percentiles, this could mean that you're exactly where you would expect to be given who you are and where you're operating. I want to show you an example of one KIPI score. And again, we'll keep with this theme of return on fundraising. This is a measure of how much you raised per each dollar spent on fundraising. And again, this is a bit similar to what we saw in that last comparison report. And for the KIPI, you'll see a score ranging from 1 to 100. If you click on that particular metric, you'll also see trends on that KIPI score over time. Now, this organization, for example, the Example Theater, they're doing better than its peers in this particular metric. If you're using the KIPI dashboard in conversations, it's always great to celebrate your high KIPI scores, but it can be really useful to think about why that score is high, as well as what's working well, and how you may be able to capitalize on that intangible quality and use it in other areas of your organization. We provide some trend information about the data points that sit behind the metrics, and that can help you interpret what's driving any trend that you see in your overall score. For this particular metric, you can see whether spending is changing or whether the amount that this organization is bringing in and contributions is changing, or both. It could be a combination of the two. And finally, if your organization decides that there is a particular metric that they would like to focus on, there is additional information to help you explore what you'd need to change or evolve to increase your score. And finally, if your organization decides that we also provide resources like articles that can help you on each outcome. And in addition to the metrics themselves, the KIPI dashboard has a lot of helpful text about each metric and how the comparison is formulated. You can get to your KIPI dashboard from the DataArts site with one click. Again, we're at that starting point that we talked about at the very front of our time together. From the dashboard, you would just click Performance Indicators, and that will take you to a few of your KIPIs. Now, to see your full KIPI dashboard, you would just click that See Your KIPI Scores. You may be wondering, how should you use this dashboard at your organization? And I'll say the dashboard is a great tool to understand and celebrate your strengths. It can also be helpful for identifying potential areas of growth. It can be a really good process to look at your KIPI dashboard together with your staff and colleagues, or even your board members, as a way to frame conversations about what's going really well and where you may have some room for improvement at your organization. Now that we've looked at everything, that was our final tour, I want to connect those dots of how the data that you've entered into the cultural data profile provides so many insights to you and the sector. So they're available for your organization through our suite of analytic reports. We spent time looking at the fundraising comparison report, which allowed us to compare our fundraising data to our peers. We have a portion of our KIPI dashboard that allows us to understand how our organization is performing relative to our peers and key fundraising metrics. And here we have the arts vibrancy map where we can see the overall arts vibrancy within our communities. And all of these tools and these research findings are powered by data from your CDP. Before I wrap things up, I do hope that you're formulating a couple of additional questions for us before we end our time together. I do want to share a few more resources and tools that you have available to you. I also want to start with a shout out to some of the research that's coming down. I'm so sorry, it's did something funny with the animations. I apologize. But here are a couple of research topics that we will be exploring in this calendar year. So, our research team will look at arts and community livability. We'll continue to explore arts organizational trends. We are excited about our support for grant making evaluation using machine learning and AI. We'll continue to explore artists and creative workers and workforce inclusion. So there is exciting work that is coming from our research and the data from our model that we explored earlier, and we do hope you stay connected with us. If you want to learn more about using data in general, we've developed a series of free online courses about data literacy. These are courses that you are welcome to take at any time, and they're meant to help you learn to use data efficiently. There are 4 courses, and the titles are Looking as We Leap, and that uses data for decision making, Strength in Numbers, that looks at financial data essentials. Using data to build relationships is what you'll find in connecting the dots, and making the case with your audience and donors, and that'll help you use data for advocacy work. We hope you explore those courses. Now, that's going to conclude my presentation. Before I wrap things up, I do want to check in at the Q&A in the chat. Rochelle, were there any questions that we would really want to share with the audience?
Hey, Monica. We had one question that asked for a list of funders who use DataArts funder reports for the grant applications. So if you go to the Q&A, I've added a link there that lists all our partners, both grant makers and research partners, that you can take a look at. But other than that, no other questions have come in.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the person who shared that question. I encourage you to look back at that chat feature. We've dropped some really helpful links about reports and data and just really helpful information that'll help you in this process. But with that, I want to go ahead and say thank you to each and every one of you who spent about an hour of your time learning more about our research and our tools within our system. Again, I just want to continue to say thank you for your contributions into the cultural data profile. It means so much to allow us to have that type of insight. Okay, I see one question, and I'm going to go ahead and try to answer this one aloud. And Rochelle, if I miss anything, feel free to jump in. Do you still provide assistance to completing the data entry for individual organizations? And this is a really great question. And we do offer support through our support center. And our contact information is on our page. You are welcome to meet with our amazing support center specialists, and they are able to assist you in the data entry process. And I highly recommend calling them or emailing them at any point where you are stumped or need support or just need absolute data entry assistance. They are a wonderful resource for you in that process.
I will also interject that they are great if you're looking at your reports, your analytic reports, or your KIPI scores. They're also great in helping you break down if there's some break down the data that you see. So if there's something that you're seeing on those reports that you're not sure why it is, please feel free to give our support center a call and they can look deeper into it with you.
With that, we hope you stay connected with us on our multiple social media platforms. LinkedIn is probably one of our most active. We hope you stay connected with our upcoming research and work. We will have other programs that we'll be able to share with you in our follow-up email. Just want to remind everyone that we did record today. To record today's presentation, we will share the slide deck, and that'll be helpful if you would like to share this information with anyone that was not available to join today. I see there's another question, but I think Rochelle is going to answer that one one-on-one. And so I'm going to go ahead and conclude our webinar time. But I'm going to remain on our space for just a few seconds for Rochelle to answer that question from another person named Monica. That's cool. Nice to always see another Monica joining our webinar space. But as Rochelle answers that question, that will conclude our time today. Thank you so much for joining us. We truly hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.